This meeting of the Albemarle County Historic Preservation Committee will please come to order. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with ordinance number 20A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. Opportunities for public access to this meeting are posted on the county's website at the county calendar. The public has real-time audio access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone. Both is provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. Please note that this online meeting and any associated chats, including chat comments directed to individual members, are a public record and are subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. We do have a quorum present. Today attending with the group will be Charles Rapp, the Director of Planning for Albemarle County. We'll begin with an approval of minutes from our January meeting. Are there any changes, additions, deletions, anything like that? If not, I'll accept a motion for approval.
So approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of our January meeting. There's no further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Those minutes are approved. Our major discussion item today will be the Historic Preservation Committee's roles in cell tower placement and the potential impact on historic resources. This was a topic that Anne had brought up at our last meeting, in which it appeared that she felt we were in a position to provide opinions on this topic. And I think I'm going to let Margaret and Anne begin this conversation. I merely brought this up for approval because it had been raised by a member of the Board of Supervisors and our liaison. So Anne, do you want to start on this?
I think that it would be important for the committee to study and understand, and if they had a comment, to make one to the board and the Planning Commission about the cell tower that's adjacent to the historic properties in Greenwood. Because the ARB was restricted from making any comment because their focus is completely northward onto 64. And the visual impact of the tower is completely southward, which is Mirador and Seven Oaks, which are nationally registered properties. And so I wanted to have you have a chance to say something if you care to. I know that DHR has made a note of record. I have not gone to get it, but they have made a outreach to the applicant with their concerns, and the applicant has deferred their application, but I have no more knowledge than that.
I wanted to point out that this brings up a complicated matter. The Historic Preservation Committee is not empowered to provide opinions of this kind in situations of this kind. I think this would also require, I may be incorrect, but I believe this would also require a change in the ordinance to make it possible for the board to accept information from this group about individual cell tower applications. And it seems to me, although I could be wrong, that if we were going to make recommendations, we would have to change our bylaws And I think that the ordinance about cell tower approval might have to be altered as well. Additionally, there's the question of whether or not we would be asked only to provide information where there was a potential historic resource or resources to be involved that might potentially be impacted, or whether it would be necessary for this group to review automatically all cell tower applications. It might be difficult otherwise. So I throw that out there for discussion. Margaret, you may have something to say also, Charles, and Ann as well.
Jared, you bring up a lot of good points, and there's a lot of different issues that we're trying to work through and get settled and get straight on. But for today, I just need to point out that we have to be very careful about what we're discussing today. We did not put that that specific application on the agenda for this meeting. What we're discussing is a general topic of Historic Preservation Committee possibly reviewing cell tower applications, but we shouldn't be discussing that specific application because it was not advertised and the applicant was not invited to the conversation.
All right, I understand that. I'm speaking more generally.
Yes.
As am I, since the application's been deferred. Very good. Just in comparison, the Ag Forestal District only looks at applications which have an impact on properties in the Ag Forestal District adjacent. So there's your parallel for your activity of interest. No one is going to drag the Historic Preservation Committee into things which have no historic properties all around it or nearby. And if there's a change in charter that's required, then that's something I did not know, and I will investigate that going forward.
Is the Ag Forestal Group, is that charge part of their bylaws?
No,
It is not.
no, they're to give advice just as you are on items of concern to your portfolio.
I believe
I'm not a lawyer and I haven't read the charter to see, but there is no historic preservation ordinance, so there is no ordinance to consult on this. I don't know
Right.
what ordinance you were.
Well,
The wireless
yeah.
ordinance does not restrict input from anybody. So
the agricultural.
I was speaking of the ordinance having to do with cell towers, not specifically with this group.
right, there's no restriction on who can say anything.
So there are certain, some of the county's committees are addressed specifically in the ordinance. Historic Preservation Committee is not one of them. So that is one of our concerns. Another one of my concerns particularly is that we be consistent in the way we're treating our applicants. Bringing one cell tower application to the committee for review makes me nervous if we're not doing it for all of them that are in historic districts or for all of that. But why cell towers and not other proposals that are in historic districts? So these are some of the issues that we're trying to work through and try to get answers on. We don't have them yet. Hoping we can get it resolved soon so we all can be a little more clear on what the role of the Historic Preservation Committee is supposed to be.
Exactly. That was my point, is it precisely, yeah. And my understanding is that again, we're not talking about this particular application, but it's been deferred in any case. So I don't think we need to discuss it, and the applicant isn't here, so we can't really do that. My concerns really were more broader than that. Can we ask staff to come to some sort of, to bring us something that will let us know to what degree we should involve ourselves in this kind of application?
Absolutely. We are,
It's not that I'm unwilling to see that happen. I just want to know that we have a structure for doing it properly.
yeah, I would say there's two main things we're looking at right now. And one is to make sure or to figure out what the committee can do legally. We don't want to be amiss in that area. And then we have to, once we know what the committee can do, we need to figure out if there's staff time available to make that happen. So those are sort of big issues
Right.
we're working through. Hopefully we'll have more information for you at the next meeting.
All right. Is there other discussion about this?
May I ask a question about the cell tower though? Is one of the advantages of the cell tower to get internet to the country folks? Is that part of it or not? Is that one of the advantages of the cell tower being extended?
I guess if we're not allowed to talk about it, we shouldn't talk about it.
Okay.
But,
We can't talk about the individual cell tower, Ed. We can't talk about that individual application.
Ed's question was in general, so I think we should certainly address Ed's question.
everyone is different. I don't see that we're in a position to answer that question because different people will say different things as they have in meetings in the past. So there's no simple answer to that one.
Well, I think that's true. And I think until we get more direction from the county on how to proceed with this topic in general, there's not much more we can say about it at this point. Margaret, would you confer?
I'm happy to try to answer other general questions, but I don't think I have anything else new to add at this point.
Are there other general questions about the topic broadly? Well, is it safe to say then that we can look forward to hearing back from staff at some point in the future as time permits to let us know what, if anything, we may do to contribute to the information provided to the Planning Commission and the board in order to help expedite approval of these projects or disapproval, as the case may be.
Yes.
Does that seem reasonable?
Yes.
All right, we don't need to take an action on this, but I thank you all for your information, and we appreciate your thinking further about it. If you have other thoughts on this in a general way, please feel free to forward them to me or to Margaret, and we will consider those as we move forward. Thank you. I wanted to go back before we leave the minutes entirely from last month. I wanted to go back and mention that the agenda for this month's meeting includes the preamble, which I read, that I read every meeting, about the compliance with the ordinance having to do with continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. And on our virtual meeting minutes, we need to change the header up there that says ordinance number 20A 14 in parentheses. The 14 needs to be changed to 16. So I'll point that out. And Chris, maybe you can take care of that for us. Thank you.
One other question in that mode. When you were reading it, it made reference to the chat, which is no longer live. So perhaps that line should be taken out as well, but you all figure that out.
Carolyn pointed that out. I've made a note. We'll fix that.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Thank you.
I don't monitor the chat for minutes either. I don't know if that's relevant to this.
I'm sorry, Liz, could you say that again? I missed the beginning of it.
Well, I take the minutes, but I don't review the chat. So those don't get incorporated into any minutes.
Yeah. All right. Moving along to our work group updates, we have some important information to talk about in connection with county historic markers, presentation and discussion. Liz, do you want to start us off there? We have a list of things on the agenda.
I don't mind starting. I don't know if Diane wanted to also have a slot of time to talk about her project. But I have a short presentation kind of keyed up.
You go
That's
ahead.
fine. Why
Yeah,
don't we
this,
start with-
What I'm talking about is kind of, we have two things going on. The immediate markers that we're reviewing, and then a discussion around sort of like what a more long-term, possibly, more permanent marker program would look like for the county. So our subcommittee has kind of been thinking about those in sort of two different ways. I have a presentation. I mentioned, let's see. Nope, that's not it. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that I presented to a group of the Yancey community center organization, and I thought I would just build upon that presentation to kind of get everybody on the same page about the status of our current marker endeavors, and then some of the ones that we're working on, and the timeline for when we would need to be submitting those to VHR. So I'll go to full screen here. You guys can see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, how do I advance? Okay, so move some stuff around here. This was sort of background that I used in presenting to members of the public about what it is we're working on. And I thought this was just important context to remind everyone that what we're working on is a project that came to us out of the Community Remembrance Project. And the goals are that the county, sort of goal at large, is that our historic signs and markers should tell a more inclusive story that represents all the people in our community. Now, we're going to find that when we get down into the nuance, historic signs mean a couple of different things. We have state highway markers that are administered through DHR and have pretty rigorous stipulations. And then there's also a few either existing or possibly future local signs. And we have not really, as a community or, as a county, established parameters specific to that local sign idea. So I just kind of give that as a little bit of a precursor. Okay. First sign that was developed as a project of the Office of Equity and Inclusion is the Albemarle Training School. So our committee did not, I don't think, work on the wording or the community outreach around this sign. It was already in the works when the project came to us. But I wanted to, just sort of be comprehensive, because I believe this sign is counting towards the 5 total being, that being the goal at large is to produce 5 signs. So I just thought, let's put it all out on the table. This is the text that I believe is finalized. The sign may even be in production. This again is a proposed local sign, not a DH state highway marker. So it's, I don't know what it will look like, but it will have its own kind of branding and aesthetic different from the state highway marker. So I don't want to spend too long, but that text exists. And then we have the Virginia Lee Murray sign, which the wording for that was approved by DHR in, I think, their December meeting. It then was slightly revised. We had to bring the character count down just slightly. So this was the, I believe, final text that we, as a, the Historic Preservation Committee has presented this text. The proposed location is in Cobham, which is kind of like there's sort of crossroads. It's a kind of a stop sign town, small community crossroads. And this would seem like an appropriate place for this sign. When I met with the group in at Yancey, I said, this is what we've done. This is what we're working on now. Both 3 additional signs and topics by the end of 2021, and then a sort of future discussing a future opportunity for a local marker program, and that was that. So for today, what I want to talk about as a group are the additional sign topics, which are listed here: the Union Run Baptist Church, the Glendower School, which is one of the earliest schools for African Americans in the kind of Esmont, Porters, Scottsville, Southern Albemarle area. And then the third sign, which is a new proposed topic, or fairly new, is the Riverview Farm, which is what it is called on the National Register listing, which we also refer to in the county as the Cargreer Farmhouse. We have text proposed and sort of in draft form for Union Run and for Glendower School, and it is in development. We have Nancy has been in touch with folks at the Ivy Creek Natural Area. The thing about the Cargreer Farmhouse is that a lot of research has been done on it. So a lot of primary source documentation exists because it was just listed to the National Register. And I believe Edwina St. Rose is happy to work on proposing some text within DHR's regulations for that sign. So we want to talk about text. We want to talk about possible community outreach, not possible, like let's do community outreach. And then our kind of look ahead to how we finalize this stuff and submit it to DHR, all with the goal of at least having all these signs, approved in this year, ideally installed in this year. So I'm just going to run through what I have, and if anyone has comments, I don't know how best to run this, but I want this to be not just a me talking presentation. So feel free to chime in with questions as we go. So take you back to the beginning of the Union Run Baptist Church sign. I want to remind everyone that there was text submitted by the Historical Society through their own research. And there were some issues with this text as presented. I know for one that there was a spelling error with Lewis Hearn, and so there was a revision done to this text, but I just kind of wanted to lay out the timeline. And what I do like about this text is it offers a lot of names of people, which we kind of lost when we had to condense sign due to word counts and stipulations. So this is the current text as presented, and it was reviewed between Betsy and Pastor Ricky White at the current Union Run Baptist Church, formerly Union Branch. So the current congregation did review this text, which is important, in terms of when we think about developing a process for a local marker program or a future marker program, obviously community engagement should be a component of that. But setting expectations and the timeline of when we engage is an important thing that we should, is a consideration we should have. So this text omits, in my opinion, an important component of this story, which is that the deed that Thomas Jefferson Randolph executed with the enslaved people, formerly enslaved, and this church congregation had a restriction, a deed restriction on it. And that is why I've been really trying to massage that text and try to better explain, you know, just as we're finding how the deed restrictions so drastically shaped our own, you know, city of Charlottesville and its development, and the work that they're doing in the Mapping Seville project tells the story of racial restrictions on many Charlottesville properties. This property as well had a racial restriction, a racially based restriction, and that was that it specifically forbade political gatherings. So post Civil War, Reconstruction era, and a former slave owner is deeding land that is restricting political gatherings. And I think that tells an important story about the time, about, you know, this community. And at the end of the day, their strength in overcoming the restrictions of the time. So I've been really struggling with this text worded in the previous way, and have tried to insert some language that clarifies, whether that be a sentence at the end of this clause or something at the end of the sentence that says, you know, despite racial covenants, the church thrived. I don't suggest that we make any change to the text without going back to Pastor Wright and the congregation and offering our rationale as to why. But I would not want someone to walk away from a sign that we produced and think, you know, and come to a conclusion that out of the goodness of his heart, Thomas Jefferson Randolph, you know, gave land, because I think that doesn't tell the whole story of you know, what happened. And, you know, I think it's our job to tell the whole story. So maybe it'd be good to talk about this a little, and then we can go through the rest of the presentation. So I welcome any comments.
Can everybody,
It's interesting.
am I muted or can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, Betsy.
Okay, good. I have been doing a lot of research about this topic. And while, you know, I certainly favor using the wording that the church committee submitted, if there are a few changes that can be made that would tell a more complete story that are okay with the church committee, that's fine with me. I proposed, Liz had suggested adding the word deeded and eliminated gave. I think, you know, that should be all right with everyone. And then instead of her sentence about racial restrictions, I simply added Thomas Jefferson Randolph deeded 1 acre of land at the site to his former bondsmen and other deacons of the church with restrictions on political gatherings. And, you know, don't know how that would fly or if that's something that the committee likes. I'm kind of late to the game on this. I've just been informed that I was not officially a member of the committee. I would like to join the committee so that we can proceed from here. But, you know, that's up, I guess, to the powers.
It may be that you were a member of the committee, but the committee was not aware that you were a committee. So somewhere something fell through the cracks, and you know, and yes, all of this conversation has been happening, but I will note that the committee has been very limited in our ability to even meet to discuss these sort of things. So would have wanted a lot more collaboration, and the you know, just the state of the world right now, and trying to adhere to county guidelines around meetings and committee work has really stifled our work. So it's frustrating.
It is frustrating. I'll just jump in and tag on to what you said, Liz. I know it's frustrating for all the committee members, and it's frustrating for staff as well, because we realize how much of the committee's work is actually gets done in the subcommittee format. And that is another thing that we will be working over the next couple of weeks to try and get some final direction from the county attorney's office and upper level management in community development to see how we can move forward with subcommittee work. In the meantime,
Sorry.
we do need to try to limit the work to individual work and then bring it together at our full committee meetings. But hopefully at our next meeting next month, we'll have some better direction for everyone. And just, we appreciate how frustrating it is, but we're trying to work through it.
I sent out a
Thank you.
timeline that Margaret, I think, distributed to everybody. Starting with Thomas Jefferson and working right on through the present day. So everybody has a good idea of what happened, what took place, and who was kind of inputting into all of this. I hope you all have had time to read at least.
I have, Betsy, and I really appreciate that. It's a very immaculate, streamlined, clean timeline. And one of the things I noticed, I really honed in on the American Colonization Society. And as I recall, it's been a while since I've read the Thomas Jefferson papers. Thomas Jefferson Randolph held office in the American Colonization Society. And from what I can recall, from what I remember reading, it was not an altruistic or charitable organization. They wanted to repatriate enslaved people back to Africa. So there's a lot of context in that time, in that meeting. The timeline is tight, and it really doesn't expand upon the flavor or the climate of that period. You know, it just gives a real clean dates and time and what occurred at those dates and times. But we're going, again, we have to look at a little bit more about into context and meaning. And from what I remember, their concern at that time in that period was when John, I think the revolt, John Brown, they were just really obsessed with, are they going to run away? Are enslaved people going to run away? And so I think it just disbanded. The American Colonization Society dissolved.
It does, right?
Because it was really more convenient just to keep the economic convenience of slavery.
After 1840, it declines.
Right, right.
And then, of course, after the Civil War, it just ceases to be an organization at all.
It dissolved. Yeah, from what I can remember.
But in the meantime, about 10,000 people were sent to Africa.
Liberia and whatnot, yes.
Another important. Go ahead, Jerry.
I had a question also about the stipulation that the land on which the church would be built would be used for worship or education, and forbidding political gatherings. I don't know who would be in a position to forbid them, quite honestly. That seems like an unfulfillable restriction on the deed. It really wasn't up to Thomas Jefferson Randolph to say that political gatherings couldn't be held, because he no longer had anything to do with the property in a legal sense, and legally it wasn't his responsibility. So that forbidding those gatherings was not something that was possible from a legal perspective. I agree that it does reflect the continued oppression of African Americans during that era, but I don't think Randolph could have done anything about it regardless.
Well, he gives an acre of land to the church. I have the deed here, and he restricts it definitely, but he's promoting worship and education. And of course, Robert.
No, I understand that.
Robert,
yeah, I understand that, but
has been part of his family, so to speak.
But he wasn't in a.
He was 5 years old.
He wouldn't be in a position though to enforce that. First of all, he wasn't any longer in ownership of the land, and second, there wasn't such a law in place. And it's just it's something he was trying to do when he deeded the land. But as I say, it was essentially an unfulfillable restriction.
I would agree with you, Jared. And I think in part a reason for his wording is because of Ku Klux Klan activities that were taking place at the time.
Having
So-
the wording in there would make it very easy for the Klan people or some wild law enforcement to come in there and stop them if they were having some meeting where they were planning something. So
Yeah.
I can see very well the power of that phrase.
And I think an interesting observation is we have now spent whatever, 5 minutes talking about Thomas Jefferson Randolph, when this sign is supposed to be about the Union run church and individuals. And that, I don't want that to become lost. I don't want this sign about, when we're asked to tell us a more inclusive story, and then the conversation kind of becomes about Thomas Jefferson Randolph and grappling with him instead of the people whose lives were affected by these, restrictions or fear of death. And, we've lost what we set out to do. So and I would, I think, I don't know, we don't have to wordsmith it today. I would like to bring the conversation back to the congregation and respect their input and perspective. If it's okay with our committee, guidelines, is it possible to have a meeting that contains 2 committee members, 2 HPC members, and an individual of the community, and have a conference call or meeting with Pastor White?
Right now, if 2 members of the committee meet, it needs to be advertised, and it needs to be all the FOIA requirements need to be met for a public meeting.
Okay, so we're just one person. Okay, well, if there's anything else, I welcome it. I don't want to take up all of our time, but I certainly encourage the group to consider, really think about our text and the story that we're telling. And I would offer to bring the conversation back to Pastor White to revisit it.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the Glendower School. The Glendower School was another topic, and kind of the rationale as to why these various topics came to our committee was, remember, we sorted a list and we tried to be geographically varied and offer some variety in where these signs were in the county. And this is a southern rural Albemarle location. You can see Porters and Esmont. I'm not sure that there's much of a Glendower community village per se anymore. I hope that I am not speaking out of turn, but it seems like it's just a place where 20 meets Glendower Road. But there was, as you can see in this, I think this is a Massey map from 1906, maybe.
There was an old mill there. I think that's what Glendower was
Okay.
basically a mill site where a lot of people were joining together at the mill.
Gotcha. And there's a Glendower estate, and that is the parcel upon which this early African-American school was built. And this is the text that was proposed by, and based on research done by the Historical Society. They did provide sources. And I wanted to just bring attention to 2 things that I think are possibly problematic or maybe worthy of some further research. The guidelines from DHR, and I'm not saying that this is either a state or a local, what category of sign we're calling it, but I will just note that their guidelines strongly urge not using things like the first, because it may be the first school that received public funding, or it may be the first in a very, post-emancipation, but to say that it was the first school in the Esmont community might be problematic and we might get some pushback. And so we may want to consider saying something different in this sentence, like one of the first or a very early school, because it is. There's a lot of schools in that area, but this one is, dates to 1869. The other interesting thing is that yet again, we have land donated by in this instance, a large estate owner. And just another kind of line of research that the Historical Society, noted, is that the land was, let's see, in 1867, Glendower was sold to William Gordon Merrick, whose home it was for more than 40 years. Merrick was an agent for the James River Valley Immigration Society, who sought intending settlers for Albemarle County after the Civil War. So that's just an interesting, line of research that someone could do. And I don't know anything about this James River Immigration Society, but it seemed like a way of getting the economy going after the Civil War in the South. But that might, were there restrictions on that gift? I don't know. Might warrant a visit to the courthouse to do some research. So that's that topic. And
I think it would be interesting to specify which Merrick it was.
Okay, yeah, I think it was William Gordon Merrick, but we would have to go back to.
I think that would be helpful to have more of a name. The other thing I wanted to mention, this is a really tiny point, and it's one that bugs me all the time, and I just happened to see it in this case. In the early 1930s, the school moved to a new building. In the early 1930s does not have an apostrophe in it.
Gotcha.
It's not possessive. Okay.
Easy enough.
It's a really small point. It's a really small point, but it happens all the time, and it bugs me all the time.
No, I'm with you. I don't care for the way it says school built in by the Freedmansburg on the Glendower estate, land donated by the Merrick family. It doesn't, something about that sentence doesn't entirely work grammatically, but factually, I'm focused on facts right now. Are we getting the facts right? And
no, I understand.
That
No, thank you for pointing that out.
still exists, by the way. I guess you know that, right?
No, I don't know.
Yes, it does. The school is right on the Glendower property, the 1869 one. I've written about it in my book.
Huh. Well, wonderful. No, I wasn't aware if it was still extant. That's really interesting. I'm just making notes. Do you think you can see it in an aerial, Ed? I can't hear you.
Ed, you're muted, Ed.
Oh, he's telling so many interesting facts and we just can't hear them.
Ed, you are muted. Unmute yourself. Well,
Well,
anyway.
in the meantime, the next, thing would be to try to get some community interest in this topic. And the Yancey group would be a great place to start. The folks out of the Yancey Community Center that meet, I think, monthly. But I wanted to make sure I wanted to run the text by this committee first before I engaged community and also, got the nod from the Historic Preservation Committee before we endeavored in that.
I think Ed Brooks is head of the Yancey Community Center now.
That's who
He's
invited me to
great.
speak. Ed invited me to speak on behalf of the work that we were doing for the Yancey group. That's where part of this presentation came from. At the time, I wasn't ready to present the Glendower School. Just wanted to kind of give an update on where we were with the existing signs.
Well, you'll find working with him great. He's a terrific individual.
Yes, Betsy, I know him. I'm on a board with him. Preservation Piedmont. So finally, the last topic is we are proposing, the subcommittee is proposing, is Riverview Farm, which Nancy and I had a perfectly above board and allowable call today, which we can do because we're two. Is that right? Or we can't even caucus two people?
Right now, the two people doing the work that you're talking about is a public meeting.
Okay, well,
right.
we apologize because we just had to gather some information for this presentation. But the topic was around, and we don't have an answer, should a sign be on the local marker track or the state marker track? And in the case of Riverview Farm, especially given that it was just recently individually listed to the National Register, I do feel like there's a compelling case for state sign, elevating is maybe not the right word, but at least inclusion among that list. I don't think we have to decide that now. I think the research may help us get to that. If we can meet the requirements, it could possibly be submitted in that application. What I mean is we don't have to decide it right now at this moment because the text does not.
I agree that it probably would be a good idea to submit it as a DHR approved sign, since it is an individually registered property.
There's a lot of activity right now at the governor's. The governor just spoke at a meeting held by DHR around them issuing, I sent out an email to the group, but a new pamphlet on highlighting all the state highway markers around topics of African-American history. I don't think we as a county would want to not, be a part of that in worthy endeavor. And if we're submitting a variety of signs and one of them is a state and one of them is a local, or producing, as I'm saying, I'm just saying that could be a good path to pursue.
Yeah.
Any questions, or let's see. Okay, here we are. Next step. So, okay, here's where we can talk about the key dates. Though we would have loved to be able to have finalized text for March 1, that might be a strain if we are asking to if we're reviewing this text again with, especially with, Pastor White, we have to be cognizant of time, people's time. So I'm not sure if there will be a huge problem with us looking at June 1 for submission of text and finalizing. That gives us one more meeting or a few more meetings, maybe by next meeting, we approve final text and then submit. I see Margaret nodding her head and that makes me feel like somewhat optimistic. So we would aim to text in June 1.
That seems reasonable.
Okay. Okay, well, Margaret, thank you for working to, try to give us a path forward on subcommittee meetings. I don't need to tell you, it's frustrating, and if it's a slight inconvenience for us, I know that you guys are working really hard, but just from our perspective, we care about doing this and doing it right and getting that community involvement and contributing to something really great for our community.
Absolutely. We totally appreciate all the work that committee members are doing, and we'll do our best to figure this out.
My dog just fell down the stairs down there. That was that time.
I think
I'm going to stop sharing.
Also, I think it might be good for members that are doing subcommittee work to be copying Jared maybe on the emails. So Jared can help just know what's going on with all the different groups and help coordinate things. Does that sound okay to everybody? Jared, you on board for that?
Yeah, that would be very helpful. There are things that are happening that I as chair don't necessarily know about, and I'd like to be kept in that loop. I think it's useful. It's also useful in helping to look ahead, get agendas prepared for each meeting and so on. So keep me in the loop, please.
Yeah, will do. Anything, Diane, Nancy, did I miss anything?
The only thing I'd add is I think we were seeking approval or support from the committee for this new addition of a marker for the Riverview Farm. I don't know if there are any comments,
Do a vote?
any feedback otherwise.
My understanding was we weren't going to make a decision about whether or not to make it a local marker or a DHR marker until we have some more information. And I think that really at this point, the important thing will be to get a little further documentation, a little further information, I should say, back to us so that we can make that decision more easily.
Well, I guess I'd just like to leave this so that the subcommittee can move ahead with the Ivy Creek Foundation in drafting up the text for the sign. I think it would be a problem to wait a month. There's a ton of information, much more than is needed to fill the 800 character count for the sign. So, I mean, we would like to proceed, but want to make sure that the committee that doesn't have any issues with that choice of
With the topic.
Anne, did you want to say something?
I was
Yes.
just going to say one indicator of which, whether it's local or state, would be if it's a property in the registry nationally or locally, then it seems like it should qualify as a state marker. I mean, we should
Yeah.
make the extra effort for that. And if it's something
I
that
agree.
doesn't have registry, then, and we want to tell a better story and have 300 more words or something like that, then we certainly can do the local ones. And I don't know who's on the board at the foundation now, and if they have someone who is a historian of sorts or not, but you all can fight your way through all those documents that already exist in the registry application to probably do the work. Anyway, thank you.
I agree.
Liz and Nancy and Betsy, are going to be contacting the foundation to let them know what you're doing?
Nancy has been in touch
Okay.
foundation, and they were excited and have, as I mentioned, I'm not sure their connection to Edwina, but she is kind of on deck, waiting, ready and able to jump in. So the reason Nancy's asking that is so that we as a committee not get out ahead of our skis in delivering things we can't, that if for some reason there was, not support within the Historic Preservation Committee as a whole.
So it sounds like, just to be clear, maybe you're asking for a motion from the committee to support adding this topic as a marker, whichever path it takes, local or national, but just a motion. So if somebody wanted to make that motion and then get a second vote on it, that would just make it clear.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Could we have such a motion so that we can move this along a little more
I so move.
readily?
I so move.
And your motion is that we do what?
That we add the Riverview Farm to our list of properties to propose historic markers for, and that we identify whether we can propose it as a local or state marker. And if it meets statewide significance, that we proceed along that vein. There are all sorts of National Register nominations, local, state, and national. And mostly what we have are local nominations, but many are state nominations in this area as well. And some, like Monticello, are national nominations.
Is there a second?
Diane,
Thank you. Diane has seconded it. Is there additional discussion? Very well. All in favor? Raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. The motion is passed.
Now,
I
does
think
this
that will
also,
help.
does this also give clearance to Nancy to reach out to Edwina and talk? Because that is part of the question, I think, that was asked before. And if Edwina's on board, I am thrilled and will be ready to, she's part of the Central Virginia history people and very familiar with all the history out here in Earlysville, all the way down to the river.
All
So
right.
that will be.
I see no problem. I see no problem with that. Yeah, I think so. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very well. Moving ahead to demolition and documentation. The demo report was received very recently. Are there questions or comments about its content? There are a couple of items, there are a couple of locations on that list, which I don't happen to have in front of me, but which are pending documentation, I think.
I had a question about one in particular, or also sort of what appears to be information not going through GIS properly, let me put it that way. The one in Esmont, what is the address? 6585, I think.
6565.
6565. So what I was just looking at all this stuff in Esmont around Glendower School. So when I saw that, I went, huh, I wonder where that is. And it is there's a listing, it's on Zillow, so you can see the pictures. Okay, so there's a house there and looks old. And then I went to GIS in the county and I searched for whether it's in the National Register Historic District for Southern Albemarle by clicking on the layer, and it is, and it's contributing. But the text, the information that's then provided in sort of the summary parcel report, which is probably what that, what spits out that the demo list spreadsheet, doesn't line up. It's not listed as, it just says NA, which I'm not really sure what that means. So subsequently, I went to the DHR site and searched for the property, and it has a description of it. It's late 1800s, contributing. And so I'm just wondering, like, why? So my question, I suppose, is why is that information coming not correct? Incorrect.
Chris, are you able to answer that? Can't hear you.
Sounds like his audio is not the right thing.
If the information's coming from the GIS site, that everything on there is notoriously inaccurate in terms of dates, property boundaries. I mean,
well, it's weird because the overlay is correct. It's showing up as a contributing color, right? But the the little sidebar detail that tells you these parcel details, it is not, they're not lining up. So I'm just pointing that out.
So it's the contributing, non-contributing, that overlay, that came out of the work list that you actually worked a lot on.
Remember it.
But that was not synced with the real estate information that's in there to start with. So I was trying to pull it up. It's not coming up on my screen quick enough to see exactly the details that you're talking about. But that the district information we entered was it's just. none of the other information was adjusted for,
This is what I'm talking about. This is the square and it's green.
right?
And this is all saying,
Yeah. Yeah, so that is yet to be updated.
gotcha.
The original plan was to do it all at the same time, but other things, other priorities took over. And so the mapping is completed and that other step is yet to be done.
Gotcha. Thanks for clarifying. I know I'm not on the demo committee, and so sometimes I come in and I have these questions because I'm not in the weeds, but I guess the larger point is like every single property warrants a little bit further research, and you can't always count on
Right.
it.
Exactly.
But
Yeah,
looked
that
like a
is-
wonderful
that is-
historic resource.
Yep. So are there other questions or comments about the properties listed in that demo report? All right, I want to go back for a moment to the markers topic. Liz, did you and Diane talk about her presentation and whether or not that was going to be part of today's discussion?
We talked about it. I can't remember if Dan was specifically ready for it, if it was still in draft in the works.
It's not on the agenda.
Oh, I
because of
submitted
that, I
it.
guess.
I submitted the draft to you, but I submitted the final to Chris. But, you know, we can do it the next time around if, you know, if,
I think that would be probably best at this point,
right. It's,
if that works.
I mean,
for the
in
two
that
of you.
presentation, there won't be any move to vote on any of them. It's just giving some general idea of where we could go with the countywide marker program.
And I have
project.
seen it, or a good deal of it, and it's a good presentation, and I think it deserves a little longer discussion. So perhaps we can put that on the agenda for next time as part of what the marker subcommittee is doing. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, we've already spent a lot of time on Union Run, so yeah, I think that probably would make sense.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Very good. The next item is a discussion about real estate letters, and I think Margaret and I have talked about this somewhat, and she would like to talk about updating the process a little bit.
Yeah, this shouldn't take too long. I just want to let everybody know that we are trying to sort of revamp our process for those letters going out. Chris and I are just having trouble getting to it, and so we have the backlog keeps growing, and so we would like to use one of our administrative assistants to help get those letters out. But I think in order to do that efficiently, we need to simplify the process a little bit. So I have drafted a letter, a single letter that we could send out to everyone rather than having to choose from the 3 form letters. We started out with a letter for a property that's in a historic district, another letter for an individually designated property, and another letter for a building that's 50 years old or older, but not designated in any way. So sort of simplify that into a single letter to go out. And I think that will help us get back on track and not maintain an incredible backlog of these letters. Also trying to possibly get an email address set up that's just to historic preservation at Albemarle or something like that, so that people can just email when they want to respond or when they want us to get back to them, or if they want to get in touch with the committee, and that might help speed up the correspondence as well. So if anybody has any
Go ahead.
any concerns about that or questions, I'd love to hear what you've got to say.
I have looked at the draft and I think it looks fine to me. I made one small suggestion to Margaret about adding information that would direct the recipient to the HP homepage and the county website that I think will answer a number of questions they might otherwise have. But I think it's fine to go ahead and simplify this process somewhat. And it should work okay. Since these are going out over my signature, these letters need to be reasonably au courant and and reasonably brief and simple.
I should point out, unfortunately, I mean, right now, since the county's website had a major overhaul recently, a lot of the, or the majority of the information that was at individual committee pages was removed or was not transferred over. And so there's really not much that's on the Historic Preservation Committee's page at this point in time. And so we need to work to get that information back on.
Absolutely. I think that should be a priority.
Yes. So it's on
Very
the,
good.
Margaret, if the database were better streamlined, and if and when perhaps, could the individually drafted letters be better? You know, I understand that probably what you have to do now is like manually figure out if what that resource is. But if the base layer was giving good information in, good information out, is there a future in which the better building of the GIS backbone could result in those you know, more specific emails? Because people aren't going to know what their house is without really specific information.
yeah, it might help somewhat. I think part of the difficulty is that there's a lag from when the property sells to when we have the new property owner information. And Chris, jump in, and you've been doing this more recently than me, so I might not be describing it accurately. There are multiple places to check to determine which type of form letter it should get, and then there's often a lag in getting that new property owner information, and so you're having to go back and check every so often, and that gets to be tedious, and so it tends to drop off the to-do list. And Chris,
When you say a considerable lag, what kind of lag are we talking about?
it could be weeks.
Yeah. There are some cases where I've seen it happen faster because Chris gets those things to me and to the subcommittee, and I happen to know that the property has been sold or resold fairly recently.
Yeah.
So there are cases where it doesn't take that long. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's speedy quick, and I don't really know what makes it different from one case to the next.
The email from Ross is coming very quickly because that's as soon as it's closed out. I think the issue you're talking about, Margaret, is the county records being updated to reflect the sale and the new owner and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's one thing for us to get the email and say, yeah, we should send a letter,
Right.
but it could be a month before then you know who to send it to.
Exactly. That's it exactly.
I guess
And-
my question was for Ross and Carter is there any more help that the real estate community broadly could help with? Are they generally aware or caring, or are they just walking away as fast as possible and here comes the bulldozer? So I don't know how we solve this in a way that gets the information to potential new owners before the 1810 cabin gets bulldozed down. So, and that's, I don't have an answer. I guess I'm horrified that there's so many properties that are turning over that we can't keep up. That I had no idea that there were hundreds of things that were happening that fast with properties that are of historic nature. So that's a comeuppance right there.
Well, one thing I think we could do is have a separate demo permit. I mean, it's all based under a building permit, and the demo permit is a check on that building permit.
Right.
So it's not a specific form. I mean, I was thinking there was a specific demo permit. I think it should be a whole new layer to have a building permit. If they check demo, then you go to the demo permit. We should have a separate county demo permit, which there should be some requirements to have maybe photographs of each elevation and a site map or something. I mean, I don't know, but the demo permit is not a demo permit. It's a building permit with a check that they're going to demolish the existing building or buildings.
Right. I am happy to ask the building official if he thinks it's how easy or hard it would be to do that. See,
I mean, kind of like if you check yes to demo, then have a whole nother line or something. I don't know.
yeah. We did have a conversation about adding to that, so the list of requirements, at least a photograph of the building so that we could make that determination easier. He was not opposed to that. We just haven't gotten to any level of detail. We're figuring out how to make that work. So we'll get back with Michael and see what we can figure out.
And if it makes you feel better, I was talking about the real estate letters that got, I mean, that's just a small fraction of those might come up for demo. It's more I think we were talking about the, when a property older than 50 years old changes hands and we send a letter, not necessarily that the bulldozers are showing up.
Right.
You did.
We need to be informing these new owners who may know nothing about what they're buying of the assets they have, so they don't get misled by somebody who wants to tear it down and take it home.
I think it's our job to encourage more thought and consideration.
Yeah.
Right. That's exactly.
I think the whole demo process needs to be improved in the county, and I hope that can happen over time. If we had an arrangement by which something such as has just been suggested that would require the owner to provide images and or site plan drawings, it would make it easier, especially since we have been unable as a committee to get agreement from the county on visiting the site ourselves unless the owner agrees. This would mean that information, or at least some of that information, would come automatically as part of the permitting process, and that would help take the burden off us and make it go more smoothly through the system once it gets to staff.
Exactly.
So I would encourage you to look at that.
I think
I feel like sometimes Ed and I are just the undertakers.
that is so sad.
It is. And by the way, the Garth house is gone. So,
Oh,
yeah.
That's a shame.
well, I know we ran
I think
into a local authority problem as far as requiring visitation, but maybe this wonderful suggestion that Jared has just made to be able to, and Ross, to expand on the permitting authority we already have can be done administratively, zippity-doo-dah, and not have to require any board authority, board action, in which case it could be far faster.
Right.
So.
Right. All right. Is there any other discussion about demo for this month or the real estate letters?
Wasn't there a demo that I responded to? I said maybe we ought to look at this building. Has any more happened on that? I can't remember which one it was. Just recently.
It was the one in Esmont.
Yeah, the Esmont building.
But it sounds like, if I'm understanding right, only one person can go look at it.
There was another.
There was one on James River Road that was Greenway. You remember, oh gosh, Greenway Farm is right in that stretch, Carter, in the middle of,
Near Warren?
yeah, before Warren on the right-hand side. Who was Paige, the
Paige
real
Massey.
estate, Paige Massey's house? That's where Paige Massey lived. He grew up.
Okay.
It's a 50s cottage. I didn't see that needing to be documented.
But there was one on the Esmont, on the road going into Esmont.
Right. We should probably have a look at that.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I
That's the one Liz
responded
was
to that.
talking about.
I said, I think we should look at that, okay?
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything more about it.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Not sure if
I don't
anybody.
remember the date, but
The listing, I mean, the National Register's listing, I think said 1890.
yeah, something like that rings a bell. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I think that ought to be looked at.
I'm not sure if anybody can hear me. I'm having, I guess, microphone issues. So, okay.
Yes.
I've been trying to switch on the back and forth off and on the whole meeting. But yeah, I'm trying to reach out to the owner of that property.
Okay.
And then, if I understood correctly, did the documentation committee want to document the one on James River Road, or was
No,
that
I don't think, I
okay.
didn't think so.
Okay, I didn't see a response on that particular one, so I wasn't sure.
Is it
But,
possible to have real estate agents not say a house is non-restorable if it in fact be restorable? I mean, the description says an old non-restorable home.
Yeah, yeah.
Sentence.
I think the best way to address that would probably be, what would I use? There's no value placed on the residence as far as monetarily.
Do you really have to disclose that in an ad? I mean, that's
Lots of
predisposing
people-
everybody to tear it down.
Yeah, I guess they're trying to not have too high of expectations going to look at it.
Then one
On
thing
the other hand, they tore down the Garth house.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
break my heart. People need to come and look at stuff. They can't take what's written on the paper and then be mad when the house it needs work when they get here. I don't know. That's awful.
Almost anything is theoretically possible if you want to spend the money on it. Many years ago, the first of two houses in profit that I restored had been abandoned for 65 years, and it had trees growing out through the roof. And there was no electricity, there was no running water, never had been. And the owner that sold it to me said that as far as he was concerned, he would probably just light a match and not look back. But so anything is possible. It just depends on how nuts you want to be about it. And there's also a lot of places that have disappeared that absolutely did not have to. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult. All right. There's nothing further on this or on the real estate letters. We'll move on. Is there anything new on ordinance research or questions on new owners of historic properties or threatened properties? Any of the things at the bottom of our agenda list?
Can we look at the real estate letter?
Sure. You mean the draft that,
The new draft of the one single letter?
let me see if I,
Maybe we can all chime in on it next meeting, or are you gonna have it done before then?
I can, let me just, let's see, hold on.
Seems like the
You may
letter
have it
is
there.
also a very important tool that we're trying to use for preservation. So I just thought we'd all have eyes on it before it went out.
Good idea.
Well, while she's looking for that, are there any new property, any new owners of historic properties we need to point out, or any threatened properties or recently demolished ones that we don't already know about?
You know, Jared, to your comment about ordinance research, I think that's a committee I'm on. We obviously haven't been doing a lot of work in that, but it occurs to me, sort of back to the beginning of this committee's meeting, is what is our role? It's like a very esoteric question. If our role is to advise the Board of Supervisors on matters relating to historic resources, but we're not even sure what we're allowed to or enabled to advise on, we seem to be in a bit of a catch-22. The same with an ordinance, you know, if ordinance research, if that is truly something we should be working on, then we should hear that from you know, let it be so, you know, and we'll do it. But there's a bit of a disconnect, I think.
I think you're right. And I agree with you that probably this is something that ought to be, we ought to be spending more time on. It's in a sense, sort of the ultimate end that we would like to try to move toward. It's fraught with a great deal of difficulty, including difficulties that we've had with this whole push in the past. But yeah, I agree. This at bottom, that this is really one of our most significant purposes, maybe our most significant one. Margaret, do you want to add something to that? Probably not.
Not right now. Are you able to letter?
Yes, we can see that.
Do you want me to talk you through the draft, or do you all want to just take a minute and read it?
I'm reading it.
You can read it.
It's a very good letter. I would just mention, you know, it's not only demolition, but the restoration or renovations. Well, I don't know. I have to put more thought to this. But just encouraging them to be sensitive in their renovations. But I think you've got it well covered.
Okay. Other comments?
I think it's a good letter.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay. Great. Then we will we'll continue pursuing getting our administrative staff, Vivian, to help us get these letters out. Thanks.
And I think the email is a good idea. The quicker they can get a message to us, we can circulate it faster. We don't send, you know, telephone calls back and forth. So the quicker we can distribute an inquiry, so to speak, the faster we can address it, especially if it's a demo and it's a time-sensitive situation where they've already made plans, but now they're having second thoughts. So I think an email to that effect is key. Communication is key, and that's one of the best lines of communication.
Here's a question for you. Would it be appropriate for, would it be appropriate for our real estate partners in the community to have this letter to be able to at least to have the context of it to share. And is that a dangerous thing to do? To try to deliver information of some sort. Maybe it's not personalized like the letter is going to be, but the all of the paragraphs of information about it or something that could be widely shared and in hand with the people who meet with these new owners, part of their new house packet or whatever. I'm just probably just dreaming and it's ridiculous because they were going to refuse to do it, but something like that to really help get this information out in a timely way. I've just never gotten over that cabin down to Rinran or whatever it was a couple of years ago. So I'm permanently scarred by that. I'm trying to avoid having that happen again.
I think this letter's our first line of defense. I mean, I see you're trying to get ahead of the process and educate the real estate industry, but I think that's a whole nother discussion.
Maybe that could be some
Yeah,
sort of a work set, like something targeted at a realtor, a local real estate association. I don't know what those memberships are, but an informational session or mailer or something like that.
Maybe something during Preservation Week or something like that.
Maybe we do a forum for them and invite them to come. I've spoken to their environmental group in the past because they wanted to get information about things and what was going on. But so anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, perhaps a forum with Carr or someone like that would be useful. And to go back to the comment relating to what Liz had to say, that would be a resource that could assist in implementation of the historic preservation plan. Those resources, we don't intend to be limited to a preservation ordinance, which is a whole additional topic that we won't be able to get to today. But yes, absolutely. I've been on this committee for many, many, many years, and it's something that we've wanted to see happen, but for a whole variety of reasons, it has not and may not happen for a while for a variety of reasons. We don't have time to go into all that now, but yes, certainly a historic preservation ordinance would be the best resource we could possibly have in order to accomplish that goal. Very well. I think we've reached the time limit before Carolyn cuts us off. Is there anything else that we have to discuss this time?
I just want to be
Yes,
clear.
Diane.
Yes, please. I would like to be clear with Margaret about what the follow-up is with legal, about how we meet, how many, what exactly are we supposed to be waiting on?
One person. One person.
I think Diane's,
Two people come.
Diane, are you asking
Go ahead, Mark.
to get the answer? We're waiting on some direction from the county attorney's office. They're preparing some documents so that we can have in writing what the legal requirements are. And then we're going to have continued discussions with the upper management and community development so that we can, well, I'm saying what I want. What I want is to have a direction from upper management and community development so that all CDD committees will be operating under the same rules. And so that we can be clear about what it is we're supposed to be doing.
And in the meantime, it is really one person.
In the meantime,
And does that include an email communication between two people just to sort out what you're going to be doing individually?
you're not supposed to be having real-time communication in email form. You can email each other. Committee members can email each other. We don't have a formal definition of what real-time communication is. What I've heard most recently is wait 15 minutes and then
email each other in what fashion? In the context of what we're
If you, what has previously been designated as subcommittee work, you can all individually work on that. You can do work individually and you can email about it, but you cannot email in real time.
In other words, don't have a discussion back and forth by email. The telephone is a really great tool. And if you're setting up a meeting, I suggest you phone each other. That's quick and fancy.
But you're
But
not.
you can't talk back and forth by email.
Well,
That's a problem.
Yeah, I don't know if
That's
that's
real fun.
really permissible either.
We're gonna be
I
like
don't think it-
Keystone Cops.
No.
I don't think
Driving
it is.
each other crazy.
We're waiting for the county attorney's office to give us a ruling, and without that, I think we need to err on the side of caution. So telephone conversations are not a good plan. Yeah.
Just send me Morse code. That'll be fine.
I'll just send it have it pending in queue for the committee to view at large.
Well, I
Right
really
now.
enjoy your emails, Diane, and I feel what the way we've been operating is to sort of think out loud in an email, you know, sort of this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm thinking, but not really, it's more sort of like, here's what I'm working on. It's more of reporting out than it is a communication in that regard, because it's not happening in real time. And it's sort of, these are the actions I'm doing. And I think that's.
Well, I think communication is not definable at this point either. I think, again, we need to wait for the county attorney's office to provide us with closer information.
Okay, so the presentation will be submitted at large at this point, and you know, hopefully it will be helpful. I mean, it's not a Spielberg presentation, but it will be hopefully helpful. It just hopefully in the direction that we're trying to take the marker project. So I'll just leave it at
Yes.
that. Just leave it for.
You can do that presentation, Diane, at a meeting, but you can't really do it before then with individual members or multiple members.
That's what I thought. So that's why I sent it to Chris. It stays in queue with Chris until we meet again. Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Is there anything further? If not, we're adjourned.
Thank you all for your patience as we work through all these difficult issues.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.